So hey everybody, it's Ed O'Keefe. I'm here with my really good friend, Vinnie Fisher. Gosh, we've known each other for how long now?
Gosh, 12, 14 years?
Yeah, super long time. So I've seen Vinnie start, grow, sell multiple companies. And when he told me he is going to build out a program and process for mentors to mentor other people and help CEO leaders elevate and multiply their efforts so they could either grow their companies, scale their companies, drive more profit, or exit it and then move into even a more mentor role. That's kind of two different facets we'll talk about. I asked him, hey, can I have you on the show? Let's bang this out. So now you have a lot of really amazing things going on. So recently, Vinnie has exited one of his companies that I remember you started from scratch how many years ago?
Actually, 10-year anniversary right now.
10 years. In less than 10 years, you started from scratch, grew it, you sold it. I want to go into that a little bit in the beginning.
Yep.
And so if you found this video and you want to learn from one of my best mentors, somebody who has guided me through everything from growing businesses, saving businesses, dumping projects that we shouldn't have been a part of, and everything from legal to taxes to money. This guy's one of the, and God, leadership, you know, we could talk about that too down the road. But Vinnie Fisher is somebody I just can't recommend highly enough. So you came out to my house to do this interview, so I appreciate you. So how you doing?
I'm doing really great, actually.
Yeah.
Deb and I, my wife, as you obviously know, we are close to having all adult children. And so it's a certain phase of life. And it's interesting. I never thought as here I am in my 50s that I'd be making some certain business transitions. I don't know. I guess I thought I had a different vision of what certain things like getting more time freedom. I had this vision early in my career that I probably would be in some version of retirement by now. And along the way, I've kind of learned the falseness of that. And so it's funny, here I am battling against some of those beliefs. And then, it's just some of those guy beliefs I'm battling through. But I'm doing great with all those things going on.
So why don't we just, from a business perspective, let's just talk about recent events. Okay,
yeah.
So you grew a business.
Yep.
And do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, fully accountable, what you're talking about.
Yep.
In 2014, it started a little bit at the end of 2013, but in 2014, I had a health company.
Yeah.
And Consumer's Choice was growing, and we had all kinds of customers. You kind of remember the run we were on.
Yeah.
And we had that great...
You went from 0 to $1 million a month plus very, very rapidly.
We were doing $4.5 million a month in 2014, and so we were doing really well with that. And we had a women's face cream, Purabella, that was doing really well, and all that was great. But here's the thing. I was doing it all over myself, doing something to myself all over again. I was growing a really big business, and I had no transparency to the bottom line. I was extremely frustrated. We were having razor thin margins. We were making like 8% on the bottom. And in a product company that needed inventory, and that's basically as close to death as you can be, because cash is tight. Even though people like Vinnie, you have a $40+ million company and you're like choking yourself to death with growth. And so one day I woke up, and it's the craziest thing. I had this simple thought, and I'm thankful. I look at in my journey with Christ that He helped me with some grounding and some simple thinking. And sometimes the simplest things are some of the most profound things for me. But I woke up dejected, tired, with a simple thought. It's not how big the top line of our business is, it's what we keep.
That's right.
And it changed everything. And so I started looking at that business differently. And I went to the marketplace to find the solution of what I wanted, to have transparency to the bottom line. And nobody at that time was doing any kind of accounting function for high transaction businesses.
That's right. That's right.
And so I'm like, gosh darn it, as a problem solution marketer, and if you look at all my companies, there was always a problem. I set out to solve a certain segment of the marketplace. Here I was again. So I was our first customer, and I got some guy in customer service to work with me about using Excel spreadsheets. And we built version 1 of what Fully Accountable was inside the health company, turned the margin of that thing dramatically around because we got daily access to the bottom line of our business.
That's right. I think I was one of your first customers.
That's right.
Yeah, because I had a supplement business at that time as well.
Yep.
And you're right. You guys were really at the leading edge, especially like in our industries, like the consumers, the e-commerce, the health industries, of bringing like virtual CFO and bookkeeping services there.
Well, if you remember back at that time, technology, my vision of what fully accountable could be in 2014 matched more of like 2019 and on. I had this vision of what fully accountable could look like now. The problem, there was no automatic integrations with banks.
Yeah.
There was no API downloads. There were no QuickBook integrations because desktop used to be the thing. So we had to do stuff so manually, but it was exciting. I'm so thankful, even though now I've handed off the company to the next generation to run, like the vision of what I envisioned in my mind in 2014 is active today.
Yeah. Well, congrats on that. I think what's super valuable, because I would say one of your greatest skill sets is you do have, and I know it's sometimes easier to do when you're not in the business.
Yeah.
Like that's why mentors are so powerful.
Yeah.
And having a third-party vision or person to give perspective. Do you mind sharing a little bit about like some of the challenges you had to overcome early on? Because it wasn't smooth sailing for the first couple of years.
I mean, everyone looks at season 3 of our business and says, wow, I want one of those.
That's right.
Nobody wants the first seasons. Well, a couple of things. One is it's always about people. Anything real that you're going to build, it's about people.
Yeah.
So, at the beginning, it was basically like the first beginning was the board of my health company didn't even believe in my vision. So I met with them and I'm like, guys, I think we can build this accounting firm. We can do this work. And they're all like, why would we want to own a service company? We have a product company. And none of them were in support of it.
Is that right?
I finally, through like probably my strong personality influence, dragged Chris along for version 1 of the ride.
Yeah.
And I love Chris to pieces. He's my dear friend. He's now the primary owner of the company. He bought it from me. He loves the business.
Yeah, for sure.
But I had to drag him at first.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think everyone can relate to that in some level. Like, I think one of the things that I love about your story is, and I think about it because some of the stuff we're doing right now, that in the early days, somebody has to figure out putting some of the puzzle pieces together.
Yep.
Especially when the sales pitch nowadays on everything is like, oh, you could white label and copy paste and it's just magically done for you. The fact of the matter is, if you want to grow something that's sustainable and long term, you gotta build the team. And build it.
Well, you got to have a good offer, right?
Okay.
You got to have a good offer. We had a irresistible offer. Our first pitch was you get all 4 of the accounting positions for the price of less than the least expensive one. That was our first offer. It's still our offer today. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you something. People miss, you and I are both marketers, so we get it, but people miss the benefit of a quality converting offer. And so that's like the version 1. You got to get an offer that works. And it's hard. And there's a reason why if you track anybody in CPM or CPA, what's the percentages? Less than 2% of companies get anything out of their offers converting. Like when you look at the numbers, it's super low. And if you have a warm list, maybe you're 4, 5, 6% if you're lucky. So I never took that for granted. But here was the problem. I remember in February of 15 when we went public to the world, we got 70 clients like that.
Wow.
And guess what our real problem was? Fulfillment, for sure. It was all about doing the work. And because none of the tech existed that exists today, we were like 24/7, kind of, so to speak, doing number crunching to make that work. And then so we invented the first thing, it's still the best thing today. We came up with this daily report.
Yes.
That daily report, if you remember, tracked all your merchant processing. It told you what was in your bank account. It became the lifeblood of what we did. So our goal was to always produce that in the beginning.
I love that. Well, and that also goes to the fact, and then we'll move on. I have tons of questions to ask you, but it's the secret to having a business is the speed of result. Like the report was the result.
That's right.
Not fixing all your cash flow, but the report, because it gives clarity. So, so you have a lot of really cool things going on. So I'm just kind of thinking where I want to start.
Sure.
Now, what grabbed my attention was you had said to me, I'm turning 50, not this summer, I'll turn 49 here shortly. And then, but next summer, I'll be 50. You're maybe a year or two ahead of me.
I'll be 54. Here.
Okay, cool. So you're, I'll let you
It's okay. You're being super sweet.
But when you came to me and said, hey, Ed, I'm building this thing called Beyond Your Shadow.
Yep.
It immediately grabbed my attention because right now my Beyond My Shadow is my 7 kids and my wife,
That's
right? But in business-wise, I've always been probably at a fault, as Dan Sullivan would call, a rugged individual, or like if there's a key thing, I like going and attacking it individually. And I've had teams I've had teams of up to 20, and right now we have a growing virtual assistant team with some internal team members. But you really punched me in the face politely with, I'm doing this Beyond My Shadow, and when I look at your last 10 years versus my 10 years, you invested in really building out a team and building out something that has legacy and that is longer lasting, where I would, admittedly say, like, I didn't do that. And I would say if I see a pattern amongst men our age, I'll just pick on men because it's easier to, because I am one, it's easier to understand them. But when you're in your 30s, you have endless energy.
That's right.
And then you get in the 40s and you got like life, like kids, and you're running. And then you're going in the 50s, you're like, wow, how's life passing me up? Like, what's going on? And so there's got to be a leverage point, and there's got to be a multiplication point. And I thought when you brought up Beyond Your Shadow to me, I was like, this is so good, because it just really
speaks to that.
It speaks to it, and it also gives hope and inspiration.
Yeah,
like,
right.
oh, there's a path forward where I can lead to significance for myself and others, more importantly.
Amen.
So I just want to open that up and just kind of share. So do you mind sharing with the world kind of like what is Beyond Your Shadow, and then where did it come from?
So Beyond Your Shadow it started with the premise that we as the leaders of a business cast a large shadow on the company.
Yeah.
We just do. Our personalities are big. What we do, the decisions we make are big. And so the tagline of Beyond Your Shadow is legacy through multiplication.
Oh, I like that.
And
legacy through multiplication. That's really good.
And so how is legacy created beyond you? The whole idea is, how do you build an organization that can withstand your shadow? Not whether or not you have a shadow, and how do you build something that's bigger than your shadow? And so version 1 of that for all leaders is really our methodology around multiplication. And so it starts there. And so I have this vision that I'm going to have people wearing t-shirts that it says, I am a multiplier. And they believe in this idea of building up their leadership teams, because companies, we use these stats that companies fail for cash flow problems. But really the epidemic of most company failure is lack of leadership development. And so we're really setting out to build out another version of attacking the leadership development market. It's all about multiplication. Where everyone else is usually just focused on self, I'm saying in the process of focusing on self, eat a little bit of grace and move forward and build up others.
Yeah.
And so that's really the core of it. And then what happens is, if we're honest with ourselves, the shadow catches up quickly. The 5 o'clock shadow we talk about this age 50, and you hit this certain point where you start thinking about life differently. And I'm thankful to have had success, Ed. I've had a couple good runs. We've exited a few businesses. I broke a couple with you. Like we've had a lot of team members. I'm real thankful for that. So I have freedom in my calendar. But it's funny, if I'm really honest with myself, I find myself also competing with my 38-year-old self. Because I'm at the top of my game. I'm the best version of a CEO I've ever been. I'm able to make a lot of decisions, and I round the corner and I start making decisions. Do I double down and go do what my 38-year-old self did and compete? Or do I actually take and equip and look to multiplication and have this idea that maybe I can have a completing attitude, not a competing attitude? So what does that look like? I think in today's marketplace, the reason why I got really passionate about Beyond Your Shadow is I noticed a lot of guys, a lot of gals, starting in their early 40s, struggling with this question. They started to have some success. Because if we're honest with ourselves, the halfway point is 80. We can't help ourselves but make it 100 because we want to live there. But the numbers... Yeah.
Okay, right? So you're talking about age.
But the numbers speak for themselves.
Yes.
It plays in all of this stuff, right?
That's
I am
right.
speaking about age. And so by the time you get to 45, You already passed the halfway point.
That's right.
And there's guys that have written about this, and Bob Buford wrote a book on halftime, and then he talked about this idea of the success arc and your significance. All great reads. I really highly recommend it. And then,
but can I interrupt you right there? But you don't. Frankly, though, I think that sneaks up on you.
It does.
You're saying it as a 54-year-old.
That's right.
Like looking backwards.
That's right.
As to like these books. I think you shared one with me, but you're like when I look at most of the guys that are our age, that are entrepreneurs or whatever, we can go down this path, but it's probably a later conversation about like it kind of goes a little bit of wild at heart. Is like you got guys at the clubs drinking too much, doing stuff, and they're still seeking significance. We're not going to go down this alley unless Vinnie wants to, but it's like you're looking for significance there. The 48-year-old self is trying to be his 36-year-old self as a way of keeping that youthful significance.
Well, you're in the process of cycling out.
You're trying to figure it out.
Yeah, but society, if we're honest, like 50 is a real barometer. You have this pressure where other young people are coming in and taking the mantle. And actually, there's nothing wrong with that. Arthur Brooks wrote a book called From Strength to Strength, and he did this study of like who are the most, what people produce inventions, what are the age of those people, and the usually people who win the Nobel Peace Prize have done something significant for society. And so what I found interesting in that study was that of all the people who win the Nobel Peace Prize, regardless of when they win it, I think the number is something above like 80%, but let's call it 85% of Nobel Peace Prize winners invented whatever it is they got their prize for before the age of 38.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So there's this idea of having a mindset that's accretive. It's this idea of learning as you go, right? I don't like the marketplace's words for some of these things like fake it, you make it, but I do believe in guess as you go. Like you just kind of figuring it out. It's like figuring out as a dad, figuring out as a husband, figuring out how you run a business. But then there's a point where you really rely on accumulated knowledge, this idea of wisdom. Well, as you look at the story arc of your career, you start to go through your 40s, you really start to lean more on your accumulated knowledge and less on your creative knowledge. And as a result of that, there is an actual natural passing in the marketplace to the younger generation. So what happens? We start talking about things. We even dream about it. We say, wow, we can retire by the time we're 50. Retire to what? And so what I've noticed in the market, no different than the way I discovered Fully Accountable, is I went and looked at the leadership deficit of people who are like leading companies and how they're so light on their team, which means they're light on themselves. And they're missing someone in their 50s or so on who are like formally mentoring them how to get through their 30s and into their 40s on how to do it. And I'm like, gosh darn it, why is that? Because we're exiting out in our 50s and the person who's most likely to help you wants to do it but isn't equipped with how to do it or doesn't have permission. And so we kind of exit you out in society into retirement and leisure. Yeah. And I'm like, we can do something better than that. And so here I am wanting to build something, not only because I'm a mentor, I want to show you how to do it, but I want to build something so that this thing we're calling Mentor Academy, and I know we'll get into that, it's so that we can actually take our efforts, instead of giving our wisdom to the golf course, we can invest it in the next generation of leadership.
Yeah, so let me repeat back what I'm hearing. So what I'm hearing back is, okay, look, you're not cycling out as you get older. You have accumulated all this knowledge and assets and resources through your experience. The definition of like what success might be or how you can apply that is just shifting.
That's right.
Okay. So because that was one thing you said to me too, is and actually strength to strength goes into the different types of not intelligence, but you have a different energy firing. I'm forgetting what it's called, but like your brain works differently in your 40s and 50s than it does in your 20s.
Yeah, that's the idea of a creative knowledge versus accumulated knowledge.
Accumulated knowledge, yes.
Right? So you're in the idea of building up knowledge by experience. That's accretive, right? So you're stacking knowledge on top of each other. When you gain wisdom, right? You track everything in Scripture. It talks about wisdom. Well, at that point, you're talking about someone who's accumulated their knowledge. Did you know that people with accumulated knowledge tend to be the more successful teachers because they actually have a lot of wisdom to give.
Yeah.
And so this whole dogging, are you a coach or are you a player? That's a fair critique for a 38 to 45-year-old. But after a certain point, you're probably better off being the teacher, the coach, than you are the player.
And so one of your new missions is with Beyond Your Shadow and Mentor Academy is like, look, hey, you have all this accumulated wisdom.
Yeah.
But you may not have all the tools on how do you transition that accumulated wisdom into value to a new marketplace.
That's right.
Or value in the marketplace. And
specifically in the industry that you work in.
That's right. You already have it.
You're already an expert.
You're already there. Yes,
so
totally.
why are you going to go mentor somebody on something you're not an expert in?
It's so funny you say that because I have a good friend of mine, a client that is in the martial arts gym industry, right? And he's like, well, I want to show med spas how to get patients. And I'm like, dude, you just spent the last 17 years mastering how to.
And he's a beast. I love him.
Yeah. But it's like, why do that? Because you got to go start at experimental knowledge versus just going here. I'm back in helping dentists.
Yeah.
It's so crazy. It's like why I avoided going back into dentistry after I sold my company for 15 years. But I went back into the marketplace with all the new technology and I looked at it, I was like, I'm amazed that this industry has not evolved. Like they're still back 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So they're still, but I accumulated 15 years of knowledge. Why go create new knowledge or like experimental knowledge at my timeline? So go ahead.
That's really good.
This is so good.
I think in that point you're making is, I think when we get to a certain point of knowledge, we really have at least covered our basic needs. The Maslowian idea that you've covered, and now you're trying to strive for significance. So one of the first moves we make because we don't know what to do is we want to offer everybody help. We go broad, not deep.
Not good.
And so I'm so thankful you're cycling back to dentists because you are probably one of the country's experts in marketing to that category. So you went out and tried to give it to other people and you find out you can help them. You can really go up and to the right by helping them. And so, our martial arts guy, he can offer so much to that community. It doesn't mean you can't offer something to other communities, but I think one of the tricky things with being a highly effective mentor is know thyself. You do need a growth mindset. I want to always be learning, but I really should stay in the lane of the 2 or 3 or maybe max 4 things that I'm an expert at and know what those are. And those should be my drivers. And areas where I'm not, maybe the answer should be, I don't know.
So I got a question for you. So before we talk about Mentor Academy, like who is naturally, like, because I know you have clients working one-on-one with you now.
That hire me as a business mentor.
Yeah, as a mentor. So let's start there with what type of, you don't have to say who they are, but like who's coming to you naturally and hiring you? Like
it's the CEO of a business, right? And these businesses, I live in that like north of $1 million revenue company. Yeah. Like the smaller one, I could help them, but they have other problems. Like they need their offer to convert. So I live north of $1 million because my whole career has been between like 5 and 50 million.
Yeah.
Like those are the type of people
that's your accumulated knowledge,
really
and it's where you can create the most multiplication and most amount of value for those people.
Yeah, and then I live in 2 areas. I live with CEOs that are trying to expand in that category their service offering in the digital world or their product offering in the digital world. And those are the people that are the most attracted to me because they would have seen my success in growing either a business that used the digital environment to attract a customer or the delivery of the service to the customer.
And you are just kind of really interesting. This is really, what I think just even like an outframe for everybody watching this interview is like the same questions I'm asking Vinnie, like you could ask yourself and apply it directly to Beyond Your Shadow and Mentor Academy.
Right.
Because it's really about like who specifically, I can help everybody, but the client that's doing north of $1 million, more than $1 million annually and looking to grow to 5 to 50, and they're in a digital space with, like where I was going to say too is like you think about how much accumulated knowledge that you guys created for the 10 years of working at building Fully Accountable.
That's right.
Because they saw the back office numbers of all these different segments and sectors. Like that alone is priceless.
Yeah, benchmarking. Now I've actually to date never have logged into a QuickBooks file, including my own. Maybe eventually I might here, but so I don't want to act like I'm suddenly an accountant. I built
but you know where to ask the question.
That's right.
If you called up Chris today and said, hey, our margins are at 23% in an Amazon store, he'd say that's too low.
I could say that.
Well, you would say, no, I know.
Yeah.
No, but based
That's
on
right.
your experience,
That's right. We've gained a lot of benchmarking knowledge.
That's right. That was my point.
So, like, I would say I've become very good at financials. I've become very good at what I would say would be the financial operation of a business. But I still lean on a CFO. I still lean on my accounting team. Yeah. But I will tell you, in running an e-commerce business, running a service organization that serves an e-commerce business, I'm an expert.
You get it. Yeah, 100%. Okay, so those are the types of clients that are coming to you
That's
right now. So I want to talk about Mentor
And what
Academy.
I'm good at in there is you come to me because I'm really good at building out people. I'm a multiplier.
Yeah.
It's my number one secret weapon. I build businesses that I don't trap myself into. Everyone starts with their expertise and they trap themselves into the business.
You made that shift. I saw you make that shift. Like where you just started being like, I'm on the board. I'm putting myself on I'm putting myself on the board.
No, but even as the operator, I actually always had a vision that I needed to build out other people leading. Because if it was all about me, then I've held back, John Maxwell calls it the law of the lid. You're only going to go as far as your leadership ability. And so if I could, what you would call spread that leadership responsibility out and grow up others, then I gave that organization a greater chance of growing beyond my legacy.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so anybody, if you fit that criteria, reach out to Vinnie. We'll tell you how in a second. So one of the things, though, that you saw as another gap in the marketplace is, and I think you're right on this. I really do. I can't wait to see this, and I can't wait to be a part of it. Is the tools and processes for mentors to build their own tribes and build their own client base. Because we talked before we went on camera, like some of the biggest traps you end up doing with as a mentor, and I'll let you double down on anything I say or add to it, is number one, you think you can help everybody. Number two is you don't really have the same constructs and frameworks as you would have like an e-commerce business of like, okay, we have a product, here's the COGS, here's this. So then your time gets sucked up by a lot of people and you undercharge for it. So you're going to be solving some of the biggest problems that, like, if I'm watching this and I'm looking at like, well, what would Mentor Academy do for me? In your mind, in your vision, like what are some things that mentors or people that want to be advisors and consultants should be thinking about, and how do you plan on solving that with Mentor Academy?
So, honestly, think about the simplest approach to it is I'll give you the simplest answer. Think of it like a mentor business in a box. It's all of it, right? So there are attributes that are going to make for a good mentor. And we should go through that in the beginning to make sure you have the things.
What are they? Because even the guys who are already actively working with clients, there's easier ways to do things.
Yeah, so I think of 6 attributes to be a good mentor. If you're not one in a growth mindset for yourself, always learning, this is one of the reasons I have a problem with this idea of retirement, is because if I spend enough time away, I'm no longer relevant. So always growing. Right? I don't have to be doing the inventorying of all of my products every day to remember inventory, but I should probably be reading about some of the trends in e-commerce if I want to stay a little bit up on e-commerce. And so I should be continually wanting to learn a little bit of that trade as some of the new technologies come on, but the base is the same. And I have an attitude of learning, and mine's all about multiplication and leadership. So why am I not daily growing in the continual learning of that? And so guard against my weaknesses, build on my strengths. 2, you should know what you're good at. You should have a clear understanding of the things you actually would be considered an expert at, that you have wisdom in. Because the reason why you need those 3 things, in my opinion, 3, and probably no more. You're too broad if you've got too many of those. I can be trickily in trouble with that with my age and what I do. Because then if you can't clearly answer that question, you probably are stuck in this, I do master of too many, not really master of a few. And so that's a tricky thing to be in. So what am I really good at? I'm absolutely amazing at building up people. I have a very high EQ. I can quickly read somebody. Now, it's very hard for me to train some of that, but I'm really good at people and personality fast. You know it, you've seen it in action, right? I'm really good at the temperature of people. So
we're joking. I had an outframe, like this goes back, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
Vinny, when we first met, he met a team member of mine and he was like, what's this guy's deal, right? And I was like, oh, he's blah, blah, blah. He's like the guy, then he's like, yeah, I don't like him at all. And so you don't know if you said it that way, but pretty much I had entrusted this guy with so much responsibility within my organization, and the guy was blowing up my tech, and I had no idea. And Vinny met him for 30 minutes and was like, "Yeah, this guy's full of crap, Ed." And I was like, "Okay." It wasn't too far along that he was gone.
Yeah.
And it was a
painful separation. Well, really, if you recall, what I said to you is, there's some things I don't trust about his behavior.
Yeah.
And some things not lining up. I'm worried about your business.
Yeah.
And so that's.
But that is one of your.
That's right.
Saying is one
it's
of your good
gift.
things, which I think is where I'm going a little bit about, which is what's valuable about your accumulated knowledge. Going back full circle, is that's one of your gifts that you accumulated.
Yep.
Yeah.
So people, it's all around people, hiring them. I've had more than 10,000 interviews.
Yeah.
I've had more than 2,000 people on my team. People is my thing, right? I love people. It's part of my gifting. So that's a strength of mine, is how to actually build out a leadership team. And then honestly, the next one is really an amazing strength of mine. I don't need all the information to make a decision. I'm a quick decision maker. I make quick decisions really fast after I read the situation. So much so I get in trouble a lot for coming in and making a quick decision for somebody else who's been struggling with something for a while. So I have to learn to slow down a little bit, ask some questions. But it's a superpower, and I love it. And I help people with quicker decision making.
Okay, I got a question for that. So quicker decision making. Oh, with your team and your leaders?
The leaders, helping leaders learn how to make quicker decisions. Do you
find that to be an issue with
most people are frozen. They need something. So I try to help you with 70%. Can I get you to 70% of the information in order to make a decision? Huh. Most people need north of 90% of the information to make real good decisions. But you know why?
Why?
Because they don't want to fail. So we're caught up in this fear of making the wrong decision.
And what's good is you're disassociated for them.
Yep.
You get to see the worst case scenario is we're going to go down this road, and the worst case scenario is you go, or the best case scenario is here. But you not doing anything keeps us in line.
Yeah, but guys in my life like you, who make really fast decisions. Sometimes you maybe take you in multiple directions.
I need guidance, man.
But,
I need guidance.
But fail fast.
Yeah.
We learn this in our early age. This is if you're a leader of a business and you're sitting in that north of 35, south of 45, you're in that accretive knowledge. You're guessing as you go anyway. So you want to fail fast. You want to try something. You want to see the results from it, and you want to iterate and make decisions from it. I mean, your whole idea of time collapsing is built on that entire premise of failing fast and trying stuff.
Right.
Well, people, surprisingly, even though they're in that age bracket, are frozen in making decisions.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
So the counter of that, from leadership making fast decisions, I love it.
Yep.
How did you slow yourself down with building up leadership teams? Because that's not always the best attribute.
So same 70% rule. So I look at the 70%.
But mentoring down to your leaders,
that's right.
Helping them make their 70% decision.
Well, so my shadow, back to this where it started, my shadow's big on an organization. I remember giving a talk at Ryan Dice's event, Traffic and Conversion once, and being the lightning bolt. And one bad customer service thing, I'd come in and blow up the thoughts of the team. And I remember really prayerfully considering that time where I had to come to a realization that I needed to see someone have 70% of the capabilities to do the job I was hoping them to do and give them room to grow.
Yeah.
And not stifle them that they're not at 90 or 95%. Yeah. So loving someone through the version where they're at, not where I expect them to be, and not where I would hope they would be, but where they actually are. And that really put a lot of relief on me so that I can love someone to help them grow up. And I learned to ask more questions than statements. So they could grow and they could see. And then I learned to do things like, I'm not good at that. And I gave them the ability. So my whole multiplication matrix is to identify talented people. Right? People would claim that I'm a good eaglet spotter. I spot eaglets. Yeah. Right? So I identify them. And then I invite them in to the process of growing. It's like an apprenticeship model.
Yeah.
And as part of inviting them in, we go along and we start equipping. which means they have to make decisions. You can't make them for them. One of the things that hero complex people like myself are guilty of is we keep making decisions and we have them on the sidelines watching us. And very early on, I started to help our younger people like learn how to make critical decisions. And so equipping them.
Yep.
And then you got to do the handoff. You got to let them do it and you watch them. And so that's where most of it breaks down. When the handoff goes to happen, most people don't do it. And then if you're going to be around me, I will have already been talking to you all along that the fifth piece of that is expansion. You have to have a multiplication mindset. Who are you going to go invest in now? So that we can continue this legacy through multiplication.
And this works directly like when you're working with mentors, so guys like me.
Yep.
And the same thing is when you're building up your executive team and they going down and building that.
Yeah, because one of the mistakes they make is Rachel's this amazing COO and people love her, but she's a perfectionist. And so one of her hardest problems in her career was this idea of delegation. And so I'd have to help her early on that even though they won't do it as well as you, can they do it as 70% as well as you? Yeah. And what can we do to train them? And now we've got this great team where she doesn't feel this pressure of doing everything.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Okay, on the 6 attributes, is there any other attributes we've left off?
Oh, there's a whole bunch, but we'll keep going on.
Yeah, that's really good.
Right, so I think one of the mistakes a mentor makes is they're still in competing mode. A mentor needs to be a cheerleader. One of the things we don't do well, we don't cheer other people's successes. We're always looking at it. I was guilty of always being a little bit jealous of the guy who's getting more exposure to speak, or the guy whose company's growing bigger, or this dude's doing this. When I started to really see my attributes as a mentor, even inside my own organization, a better multiplier, I was cheering other people's successes. So I think you gotta really develop a muscle for being a cheerleader for your mentees.
Yeah.
And if you are worried about competing with them, you've got a wrong perspective in the role on your team. And then one of the other things that is super important is some clarity to the role. Meaning, like, I want to mentor you, but if you're not signed up to be the mentee, like as in we kind of almost like have a little covenant where we have a statement of the expectations between the two of us. Here's like the kind of what's going to be laid out. Why are you really hiring me? You're hiring me for a growth mindset and to help you think bigger. I'm not really here to help you get 3% more on your marketing campaign. I'm not a consultant.
That's really good perspective. That's really good because the creep of scope, like on a subcontracting thing or as a consulting to a being hired as a consultant or as a mentor, one of the key things, if that what you just said is not clear, like my role is not to do this stuff for you.
That's right.
But to help you make the decisions and hire the people and process that out.
Yeah, so I'm an encourager. So my job is to help you to understand some of your strengths. How do we dive in and grow those while maybe identifying some of the things that you're not so good at, what we might call weaknesses, and how do we guard against those? We get some other people to do them. I love consultants and coaches. Mentor is all of those wrapped into one, but I'm not signing up to be your speed and automation, get it done for you. If anything, I'm like your rented executive who's there to cast vision into the organization and to you. Yeah.
Can you give an example? And can you give an example of a recent client when they come to you? When you do one-on-ones or when you do your one-on-one consulting, and we'll talk about how people can be in your mastermind or any of that, like more group model. Are there patterns of problems? I guess you could even say in this economy, however you want to phrase this question, that guys, you're seeing patterns of what people are facing that you're helping them with as far as...
It's fear of the unknown, right? The risk of taking the next thing. I joke all the time. My oldest, Sophia, is 23. And so someone's like, what's it like to have a 24-year-old? I'm like, I don't know. I'll let you know next year, right? I'll let you know in a year from now. I have no idea what it's like to have a 24-year-old. Well,
so funny.
The average 38-year-old crushing it in business, if they're doing $5 million in revenue and they want to do 10, they do not know what it's like to have a $10 million business.
Right.
And so all the things they need to do to double that company and all the things and decisions and cadence of when to make a decision.
Yeah.
And so they're stuck in the fear of the unknown. And so what's the right risk tolerance? One of the trickiest things of a business that just starts to make a little bit of money, everything looks like an opportunity.
Yes.
And so one of the tricky things with that is distractions, in my opinion, are actually usually really good ideas that are just ill-timed.
Yeah.
And so one of my jobs is to help you to break away some things that you shouldn't be chasing.
We were talking about a good friend of ours right now that's like, yes, we can sell that. We can sell that too. But is that going to get us to where we're trying to go?
Yeah.
Like just because there's problems in the market doesn't mean you got to be the one solving all of them. You could maybe, it's the 80-20 rule too. Like you could serve the most profitable part of the market instead of the entire market. And I'm talking about a niche industry.
So, it's funny you say that. So like whenever you think about starting a business, anyone starts a business, what are the first few things we do? We think about getting, like, back in the day, we'd get like a business card. But now our version of a business card is like a website or some social media
funnel.
things. Right? Something, right? That's like our version of a business card today. It's a brochure. Then what will we do? We probably think about some legal formation. We want to set up some kind of LLC or something. And we do all these things that are like business formation things.
Yeah.
Well, we treat some of the early stuff like vision, mission, values, like these formation things.
Yeah.
And I think we have the matrix on that a little bit wrong. I don't think it's so bad to throw out some of those ideas. But I remember I was asking Sophia when we were in late high school, what do you want out of a boyfriend? And she said, well, I don't know, Dad, I want this, I want that, I want this. And she started just kind of having these random ideas. I then said to her in this like clarity moment, what do you not want out of a husband or a boyfriend?
That's right.
And she rattled 20 things she didn't want. When I think about creating vision and mission, you come up with some clear statements about what your company is so that it's a non-negotiable list of what you shouldn't be doing. You look back to that and say, okay, here's this new opportunity. You run it through the filter of what your vision and mission are of your company. And if it looks like a good idea, but it doesn't fit, you then have someone or yourselves, or you speak some clarity into your team. That's a good idea, but we shouldn't be doing it right now. I remember one of my earliest partners, who you know is your buddy too, Mark and I, we would come to each other with all these great ideas. And they were great ideas. But by the end of a month, we'd have 7 new companies in our head.
Yeah.
And neither one of us had the maturity of like, block off the distractions. We just had all gazillion ideas running at the same time. And as maturity kicked in, I realized the mission and the value of the company was really to block out the distractions, not to add more things to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a critical component to if you want to see any business that's growing in the Pareto principle and all that, they are all focused and clear, and they block out these. Andrew Carnegie called it the dribbles of income. Don't be focused on the dribbles of income because it's going to impact the majority of your income.
Yeah, the in time collapse, when we talk, even working with high-level athletes, like my daughter's boyfriend is a Division II golfer, one of the top golf amateur, like in his area. I'll talk about that differently. I don't know how much, like, she's like, Dad, why are you sharing all this stuff? And I explained to him, because I coach high-level athletes.
Yeah.
And I said, like, when you coach high performers, my job is to remove friction and relieve pressure, not add friction and add pressure. And what you're describing by adding all these dribbles and more stuff, it just creates more friction and more pressure and distraction.
There's like a lot of noise right now in the marketplace about like, can you be a coach or do you have to be a player? And I don't think some of those analogies pull through well to business, because a coach in sports, I don't need to be a good athlete to coach somebody. My job as a coach in sports is to help you maximize your potential.
That's
not
right.
Mine. The tricky thing in business for a coach and a consultant, like if what you are is a performance coach, it's the same thing. If what people really want you to do is have expertise or experience, the coach is a problem, because you lack some of the wisdom, what it takes to run a business. And so one of the differentiators between a coach and a consultant would be just that. I don't love a coach who just comes in and gives me ideas. A consultant. I like a consultant who comes in and wants to put the efforts in to done for you, like you guys do, to solve a throughput that I can't get done. In your marketing agency, how you guys...
Yeah, one of the things, I'll give you an example. We did not want to run ads. I did not want to run ads for dental offices. Right. And the more I dove into it, I was like, this is never going to get done unless we do.
Yeah, you're solving a problem. So you're bringing speed and automation to the table to solve the problem for them. I love that kind of consulting.
And then we plussed it and we made it better, because we do interviews like this where no one else in the market does that. And I was like, well, that's because here's the thing, Vinny. This is where like, because through accumulated other experiences, I was like, oh, we could bring this new accumulated thing back to something we had already, like, so now we got to explain. But yeah,
so
keep
a mentor
going.
is actually really some of the best attributes of both a consultant and a coach. I have all the wisdom. I have the ability to do the implementation, but I'm actually helping you maximize your resources, not me doing it for you. And so the coach thing and all that noise around it, there's a whole industry around coaching. I'm not here to dog coaching. I'm here to say that, like, experience in operating the type of business you want, you can find that mentor. The funny thing is, two sides of it. You know where I learned this? It was in my ministry at church with young men. Like, they wanted some life of, like, what it was like to be a dad and a husband and, like, follow Jesus and figure out stuff, but they were afraid out of their mind to approach me. The funny thing, on the other side of that equation, I was afraid that I wasn't relevant to helping the young person.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
It's two-sided. This is the mentor-mentee conundrum. Like, a mentor has all these things, but they're not sure that they, like, how they would approach or whether they're relevant to the young person. And the young person's like, I don't know how I would approach their time. And so I think a mentee needs a mentor, and I think a mentor needs a mentee.
100%.
I think it's so critical, and we don't practice it well in our society.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm being like, I just want to ask you this question because it's what I keep being asked to ask you. Is how do you protect your confidence right now? It's so off the wall question, but it's just.
Well, I'm really thankful that I think, like, when my mind is acting healthy, I always joke that I had an overabundance of confidence. But I'll tell you, I was telling your lovely
and it's really through the different seasons because, like,
that's right, ups and downs, buddy. I was just telling your wife this, like, we were talking about, a study came out that you cannot have anxiety and gratefulness at the same time. You can't have them both. So one or the other is what you have. And so isolation. So I'm a people person.
Isolation's awful.
Isolation is awful for a guy like me. Now, there's a difference between solitude, which is going out for a walk and getting my thoughts clear and getting quiet. So I'm a Christ follower. And so for me, it's really important to, like, I really believe in an active living God. And so because of that, I've worked on my relationship with him. And the more I've done that, people have seen his fruit: joy, patience, peace, kindness, compassion, friendliness, laughter, humor, all show up because those aren't my things. Those are his things. And, like, so I work on our relationship. And because of those things that he has that shine through me show up in my business life. They show up in my marriage. They show up in my kids. So I work on that a lot. I work on solitude, not isolation. Yeah. And then, honestly, I really have memorized scriptures that are important to me because I, every day, wake up with the goofiest of goofy thoughts. It's acting on those thoughts that get weird. Yeah. And so I grow anxious. So Peter says in one of his books, cast your anxieties unto the Lord because he loves you. And then in another book in Romans, it says, take captive your thoughts. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. It says, think about things that are true, noble, praiseworthy, honorable. Put these things into practice. So I'm constantly working on my mind. So you think of all the high performance people. I love how science is proving creation. For me, like, everyone's talking about this idea of neuroplasticity, that your mind can be reworked. Well, that's the transforming or the renewal of your mind. Mm-hmm. Of course it can be, because we really think about all the negative things. It's like Sophia's list. She knew the 20 negative things she didn't want. Yep. And then you start focusing on the positive things you want. You got to work at that. So you got to constantly be a high-performing person. And I'm a driven person. I got to continually be working on my mindset every day. Yep. I don't have this licked. It's every day.
Good. Well, it's a great answer. That's a great answer.
It's the answer.
Okay, how can people work with you nowadays? Like, let's go through. I had asked you, like,
they can hire me one-on-one. So they can hire me as a business mentor. You're going to go through the process. And to see if we're a good fit. I don't really just take one-on-one clients, though.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm building a community of people I work with, right? And what does that mean? I spent some time with my buddy Kevin Nations, and I saw some of his model. I've seen the years of the stuff that I've kind of grown in business and what works and what doesn't work. Is I'm really good at growing companies. Yeah, I've got a resume that proves that. There are people who are running their own companies that miss so many things they need to do. So I want to work with them one-on-one. You can only work with so many, but I want them in the community that I have. So I have a mastermind. So a one-on-one actually is part of my mastermind and is an entire ecosystem. But if you're in my mastermind, you don't have to be one of my one-on-ones.
Okay, so I could hire you one-on-one, and then I'll get the mastermind.
That's right.
And then, or I could just jump into the mastermind, but I don't get direct access one-on-one.
That's right.
I get group access.
Yeah, and so the pricing model of those two, which we don't have to get into, someone can figure that out and see me. The irresistible offer is you realize it's better off getting me one-on-one because you get both.
Yeah.
And so that's that. And people say, Vinnie, with all the things you got going on and all the successes you have, why are you like mentoring? You've now had some exits. This is great. I mean, there's a growth component to life, and when I want to help. And I honestly believe, as an ambassador of Christ, I can help so many more people. And I really believe in multiplication, and I want to see others succeed. So I'm absolutely addicted to mentoring.
Can I say something on that question?
Yeah.
Because that question is a steal your joy question. It's a false premise that's based on old thinking of like you're supposed to sell your company, go to the lake house, and stop impacting people.
Yeah.
All the joy is done with others.
At least for me it is, yeah.
Right? I mean, come on, it is. Like,
I know.
Whether, so...
You want to prove that out? Go talk to somebody who's been retired for a minute. And you're going to find out they're disillusioned.
Yep.
They lack purpose. They get up for the day and a buddy of mine, Jeff, one of my best friends, I love him. He just said this the other day. You need to have a reason to get out of bed. You have to have your alarm clock set to get out of bed. There's got to be a reason that your day matters. And you know what? Investing in others. And so my tagline is equipping today's leaders for tomorrow's opportunities, right?
I love it.
How do you do that? Well, you spend time intentionally on them. So I have to quiet some of my own rights, my excelling leadership stuff, and grow up others. So my buddy JC, who's in this phase of growing his business, he literally is one of my clients. He reaches out to me all the time. I have a text on this and a text on that. Like I have a handful of those type of people, more if I wanted to. And so that's the kind of relationship I have with people.
And can I say one thing on that too? Because I've known you for a long time. If your friends are trying to get you have your friends.
Yeah.
But also don't be afraid. I'll just say this to you, like some of my best clients right now are some of my dearest friends for the longest time.
Yeah.
And they, like the conversational cup of coffee, we're spitballing, masterminding. But if they're asking you to like do all this extra stuff or they want your services, don't be afraid to say as a mentor, like, hey, listen, I got a friends and family package or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But here's my ask, right? Or how do you navigate that?
Because
I'm navigating it now.
Texted me the other day.
All my clients right now are friends.
Yeah.
I
work with people I love and adore.
That's so true.
I want to work with people I love and adore. If one of the benefits I got from my time is that I have some freedom on my schedule, well, gosh darn it, I've learned it's who I do it with, not what I'm doing.
100%.
And so since I've got some of that time freedom, I have the privilege of choosing who I want on my calendar. So why wouldn't it want to be with more people I want to be around? So I jokingly say this when someone says, are you free? I say, no, I'm not free, but I'm available.
I like it.
Because if one of the people who love me do not want to hire me for what I do, then maybe they're not ready for that. Or maybe that there has been some missing conveyance of value. But so the best loving thing I can do for that relationship is just say no.
Yeah. But sometimes that's, just so everyone knows this too, because like for those out here who are going to be a mentor or say you're just leading your thing, sometimes it's just pure timing. Sometimes it's not a good timing and good fit for them right now. But here's the other thing. What I found too is, and I think you taught me this, is like if I take clients that are not willing to invest in my fee, and I lower my standards, I just now cluttered my closet and I don't have as much room available for the clients that are happy to pay full price or to be in the group or make it into the mastermind.
I think for me, I agree with that. I agree with it for a slightly personally different reason.
Yeah.
So, I'll look right in the camera and explain this to you. I'll be honest and vulnerable, Ed. For me, I used to give a lot of my time and stuff away because I'd go back in life and look at the triggers of my wounds. And I would always run up against, because of some of the brokenness in our family or some of the abandonment, was I lovable?
Mm-hmm.
And so when I give my time away is because I had a poor relationship to whether or not I needed people through time to validate, am I lovable?
Right.
And so one of the worst things I did is I mixed those two issues together. And so if someone wants me to help them in their business, I realize I have a lot of value to them. Why am I then suddenly doing the exact opposite and discounting that to free? I remember Deb and I were leaving law school and we were moving to where my first legal job was, and we were selling off the stuff of our house. And we had this legit nice air conditioner that I had had for maybe 2 or 3 months. I just wanted to get us through the last few months while I was studying for the bar exam. So I'd maybe used the thing once or twice. So I put it out in our garage sale stuff. I have the sign free on it and like, just take it. So we're at like day 3 of our garage sale and it's still sitting there, this brand new air conditioner. I put $25 on it and sold it for $40.
Oh, isn't that funny? Yeah.
The problem with free is it removes your own value proposition of how you see it as valuable and how someone else sees it as valuable.
That's right.
And so we then do things like take it for granted. And so I don't think you're helping yourself. I definitely don't think you're helping your client. And I don't think you're helping the marketplace when you make the proposition of value prospecting free, because you have really diluted the value of the offering.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so we have one-on-one, we have your mastermind.
Yeah.
How would they reach out to you?
Oh my gosh, I'm so accessible. The best way to get me is at VinnieFisher.com.
Okay, well, VinnieFisher.com.
Yeah,
great.
you can just go to there. You can always go to BeyondYourShadow.com and just hit us and contact us. And if you can't find Vinnie Fisher on social media, then you aren't trying to look.
Well, yeah, I know. But Beyond Your Shadow, do you have a book coming out for that?
I do. It's called Beyond Your Shadow, Legacy Through Multiplication.
Wow.
We'll have the first version of it here in the fall. We'll start to do every good marketing tactic to get round 1 of that. I'm listening to a friend of mine, Katie, who's like suggesting we get manuscript 1 out in the wild and then consider taking it back, tuning it up, and have a relaunch of it after we get feedback. We'll see. I'm going to do some version. Now, this is book number 4. I've done all the other 3 differently, so why not try number 4 in a different format?
Yeah. Does she want you to just start selling it as is?
She'd like what she would like to do, and I don't think she's wrong. She'd like me to provide it and put it in the hands of the ideal customer.
Got it.
And get their feedback.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like both. Whatever works. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like
John Maxwell has done this. He's actually written a book. He's released it out, got feedback from his ideal customer, and then kind of tuned it up and just put it back out as an updated version of the same book. Lots of guys do that. So we'll see, but it'll be out this fall.
Cool. Mentor Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where can they find more about Mentor Academy?
So at BeyondYourShadow.com,
Beyond Your Shadow,
we have a link to Mentor Academy. Mentor Academy is actually the marketplace buildup for mentors to be able to bring in mentoring to their arsenal of offering leadership to the next generation.
Got it. Both outside in the world and internally in your business, internally in your church, internally wherever you...
So we decided to do 2 things.
Yeah, I'm asking that.
Yeah, so originally the Vision Cast was this idea of build it for community and build it for the marketplace. And so I believe in a simple, clear offer. So at BeyondYourShadow.com, Mentor Academy is for the marketplace. We are also at the same exact time building Momentum Mentor. That's housed at Momentum organization where we built Marketplace. And the reason that's being built there is that's built for the local church. I'm not trying to confuse the offers. Now, with some help from John Maxwell, who's been a personal friend, and some others, the difference are the two. It's really the same teaching. One is going to be overtly Jesus first, mentoring second. The other one's going to be mentoring first, Jesus second.
Either way, you're finding Jesus.
That's exactly right.
That's right. Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
That's great. I love it. I love it. Man, we should do a podcast just on that. That'd be great. I had one more question for you. Were you planning on doing any small workshops or live events?
Yeah, I think whenever you're going to do live event stuff, you should always have regular live events, right? you could do 2 different versions of live events, and we'll do both.
And you could give advice right now too on this, because this is going to be a client acquisition model.
I think that lots of times if you want to get started on something, just turn on a live event. Have 3, 4, 5, 12 people in your office's space or wherever you can actually host that level of people. If it's at your condo or your really super great place, do that. Get them together for 2.5 days and teach them something that they want. That is a great way to draw in people who can be part of your bigger community. Do that as a one-time thing. They pay to be there. I would really avoid free guests.
100%.
And I would just have paid people that want to pay to be there and teach on a specific subject that you're really good at. I believe those are great ways to draw people into your community. And so we should do those. Some people have gotten really good at that. I've done this, who also do those lives as also virtual events. They do the same 2.5 days. They just don't do it live in person. They do it over an internet Zoom link or whatever. They both work. I tend to like the less scalable version. I don't think mentoring businesses have to be completely scaled, because 20 clients later, I'm pretty busy. Got to be careful about always thinking scale mode when I'm in more growth mode. And so why I like live hand and touch intimacy is because I'm selling more of an intimate product. Why the virtual could work is if I'm going to do more group coaching or some more expansive things, then I could probably withstand less people buying, but more prospects coming in.
Yeah, I think there's benefits of both, and I think the
the tricky thing with growth and scale, Ed, is mediocrity. Right? I lived it in my product business. I had to live with the fact that if I'm going to be a mass marketer, something's going to have to give to have a lot of customers. Well, in a space where you're doing more intimate events and you have a smaller base of people that you actually provide a service to, you probably don't have to cave on mediocrity. What you have to do is guard against people who don't want to buy.
When you're in person?
Any smaller event. You really want people there that are ideally the right fits. And then you know what you do? You really just deliver all out for what they paid for. And if they're not ready to buy, then that's not right. It's not the right fit for them. It's not the right fit for you. I've had people cycle back in my life after 3 or 4 events who are ready. If you have too much pressure to make people make a decision at the moment, I think you probably have to evaluate where you are in basic needs.
Okay, that's a different topic I want to get to. I would say, like, I love in person because of the speed at which you can build rapport, get feedback, and like win, lose, draw, good, bad, ugly. You're walking out of there with an accelerated, like, oh, I spent time with these 5 people, 10 people, and here's the data that came back to me so quickly.
But it's a big ask, right? I mean, 2.5 days to get someone to jump on a plane and come to my offices and drink our sparkling water and all this great food and spend 2.5 days. I want to make sure we're always delivering high value.
That's right.
Because I'm asking you to have 2.5 days.
But so here's my thing too, is I think after the pandemic now, I think people are reveling and going and getting knees to knees, toes to toes. I think paid virtual still works.
It's kind of like self-serving because I believe 100% with what you're saying because I do it too. So I'm a big fan of get 5 to 12 people in your office type thing. And then those people are the most likely people. The numbers, like trend lines speak for themselves. They say that if you get going in regularity and you start figuring out some of what you're good at and what you offer, let's say you have 10 people in the room, most likely 2 people will take your higher offering. Don't run a live event unless you have a higher offering for them. Don't make that your only offering. What do buyers do, Ed? Buy.
Yeah.
And so please don't run a live event unless you have a higher
I got
offering.
a question for you, and then we'll start wrapping this up for now. When just a money question is like, so back in the day when we used to run live events, we would charge, say, anywhere between $1,500 to $7,000, depending on the obviously the higher you go up in price point, the more intimacy and there's more delivered or something like that. But you were just at Kevin's event too. Like, did you guys talk at all about cost to acquire a live attendee? Or was that even brought up at all?
For Kevin, it wouldn't be brought up because he would tell you that most of his customers are all acquired organically.
Organically through social.
And so he then has to track that cost of acquisition a little differently than someone who's actually paying for their ads. So I do a mixture of both. I rely on our credibility in the marketplace and my reputation and some of our organic touch and ad spend. I like a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So I'm able to give you a pure number, a diluted number, and an organic number. But I think it's super important. So, we run these 2.5 day, $5,000 per person events. And so you get 10 people in the room, your gross number is pretty simple math. That's $50,000, right? If it cost you $10,000 to actually deliver that 2-day event, then you got $40,000 left. Right? Yeah. Of the $40,000, how much did you have to spend to actually put those people in the room? Right? So you got to think about your cost of goods, your gross revenue, and all that. Lots of people will run these loss leader events, and they're great. But the only reason you would ever want to do that is because you have something else to sell them. Don't run these low margin events and not have them something to offer them. Yeah. Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
I don't really want to do these 2.5 day events just for $5,000. There's nothing repetitive to it. Yeah. But I do it as a way for them to have exposure to us so they can join our reoccurring community.
Yeah.
That's where we want them.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, cool. So VinnieFisher.com.
Yep.
BeyondYourShadow.com.
Yep.
And
that's it right there.
That's it. I love it.
And then all our social media handles, I'm Vinnie Fisher.
Okay, cool. Well, this has been awesome, buddy.
Thanks, man.
I love having you here. My family loves seeing you.
Oh my gosh, your family is awesome. I'm thankful. Like we are the people who have worked together a bunch, right?
Yeah.
You work with your best friends. It's weird when you don't.
You really do. And I think one of the encouragements I'd say to people is like, be yourself, get out in the marketplace. You're going to attract the people who like you. Don't be anyone you're not, because you're just going to attract people that you don't like being with.
And the best thing you can do is like say no, and some people say no to you.
Yeah.
Like you can't serve everybody. Yeah. And so since you can't get relationally mature with, I had a bad problem with this. If you heard my honest assessment, I always struggled with whether people loved me or whether I was lovable. And so what I did is I attracted all kinds of people unnecessarily.
That's for our next podcast. That's a good topic. On our next podcast, we're going to talk about Wild at Heart. We're going to talk about your backstory on that from a non-business perspective, and then a lot about Jesus.
I love it.
All right,
and by the way, all that impacts business. A house without a firm foundation can't stand.
Oh, very good. Very good. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode of the Ed O'Keefe Show. Please reach out to VinnieFisher.com. And check out Beyond Your Shadow, or like them, follow them, whatever it worked for you. Leave a comment. We appreciate you and hope to see you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Vinnie.
Hey, thanks, Ed.